Hello, I'm Yang Rui reporting from Beijing. Today we talk about charity in my country. Most people have compassion for the weak and vulnerable of society, but the spirit of philanthropy takes root in the culture instead of in a developed economy alone. As more people are getting rich in the second biggest economy of China, intellectuals, lawmakers and entrepreneurs start to discuss care, help and love in an unconditional way. Private donors and non-public charity foundations, however, cannot find their niche in China, partly because there is no legislation to ensure their legitimate entity. Social development is years behind economic expansion. People with conscience are searching for meaning of life at a crossroad, as the Civil Affairs Ministry of Beijing has to wrestle with the problem of transparency and abuse of raised funds, either at the state-owned Red Cross societies or public foundations. In today's case study, we shall take a closer look at the One Foundation, which was founded by Jet Li, a martial arts superstar of China. Today we are happy to be joined here in the Beijing studio by Mr. Edward Lehman, Managing Director of Li & Xu Law Firm, and Mr. Ray Ye, representative of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. But before we get started, let's look at this.
One Foundation, established by Chinese movie star Jet Li, celebrated its official registration as a public foundation. That means Shenzhen One Foundation from now on will raise funds as an independent organisation. One Foundation's transformation draws an end to Jet Li's waiting since its establishment 3 years ago. The transformation not only enables its fundraising ability, but also enlarges its original capital from 2 million yuan to 50 million. With many enterprises giving a helping hand, especially Shenzhen-based ones, Jet Li has invited several entrepreneurs to join the management panel of the new foundation.
To guarantee the future of One Foundation, I've asked its most excellent leadership for help to protect every yuan donated.
Established in 2007, the One Foundation has been running as a private charitable project under the Red Cross Society of China. It encountered legal problems when it tried to raise funds as an independent organisation. According to experts, the government, through the transformation, has sent a clear signal that creates more opportunities for civil organisations and individuals to take part in philanthropy. And the successful transition of the One Foundation may stir activity in China's philanthropy, and others may copy the example of first setting up a foundation and then developing it enough to become a formal, registered operation. The foundation's location in Shenzhen is not a coincidence. Under an agreement by the Ministry of Civil Affairs and the Shenzhen municipal government, the city is a pilot site for civil affairs reform, including foundation registration.
Welcome back. Gentlemen, do you think the successful transformation of One Foundation in Shenzhen is a landmark event? To what degree do you think this pilot program will inspire other non-public foundations to be successful in this country, which has never before had this taste of the charity cause? Ray?
I personally think this is a very significant step, because this is sort of like a liberation of a charity that's organized from truly a non-government organization with the ability to raise funds from the public, and that will probably help to generate the movement of more people to contribute to charity or philanthropy.
Yeah, maybe it will, maybe it won't. I mean, I'm not so encouraged by the whole thing, frankly. I mean, I've been living and working in China since 1987. We've been dealing with not-for-profits and non-governmental organizations since shortly after that period of time. The truth is that the keys to the whole situation lie with the Ministry of Civil Affairs. Ministry of Civil Affairs is the one who oversees orphanages, they oversee aged homes, they oversee the licensing of franchisors. They have an entirely large panoply of things to deal with, and what they've decided generally is that they're not going to approve these kind of organizations. What it has been is Shenzhen has stepped up, which is against, it looks to me like the Ministry of Civil Affairs, the local Shenzhen authorities, have said we're going to accept this. And I think that there could be time in which the ministry could say, hey, we're not going to accept this any longer.
So far, the Ministry of Civil Affairs in Beijing neither said yes nor no to the registration of One Foundation in Shenzhen, which pioneered China's economic development zone. In fact, last year it witnessed the 30th anniversary of its founding of the Special Economic Zone. What do you make of, say, the implications of having the yearly silence from the Civil Affairs Ministry in Beijing?
Well, I think this is a test case. I'm certain the folks at the Ministry of Civil Affairs are trying to see whether this how far going to let this test case move forward, and but I think, like many things in China, it's some kind of piloting or let somebody try it out first, and I do think in the last few years, like the last 2 to 4 years, there is a increasing awareness of the importance of philanthropy and the greater participation beyond those very wealthy people or very large organizations. So I do think this will be something look at very carefully, and my guess is that I don't think the Shenzhen folks, the civil affairs folks there, just did it without any inkling of what this will be treated. So I think there must be some kind of implicit understanding. This is a kind of test case to move forward and to be observed.
Yes, indeed. The One Foundation is testing water in Shenzhen. What do you make of the meaning of the location in Shenzhen? Because as I said earlier, it's a trailblazing spirit should command great respect after commemorating the 30th anniversary of its opening up, given the special position of Shenzhen in the Chinese history of opening up. What do you think?
Yeah, no, listen, I think it's fantastic. I mean, Shenzhen is a tremendous location. You've got a myriad of professionals and young people that are living there and working there. What's interesting about Shenzhen in particular is that it's an amalgamation of Chinese from all over China. So it's a special economic zone that only was a small fishing village in 1979. And so it's kind of interesting because for it to start there, where people don't have their families, where people don't have an attachment necessarily over many, many generations, and to give one kwai once a month, this is what they're shooting to do. So I think it's fantastic. I mean, don't get me wrong, but I am not convinced necessarily that this pilot program is a signal that it's going to be, the floodgates are going to be open.
You don't think it's going to be a revolution overnight. Ray, what are the internal challenges that the Ministry of Civil Affairs is facing in terms of encouraging the rest of the non-public foundations to get registered with the official foundations like the Red Cross Society?
I personally think it's just it's a mental set. It's people, because those are relatively new entities in China or new concepts, whether it be foundations, whether it be organization that can raise fund or not raise fund. I think because the tradition is for government units or the derivative government units to do this type of work. So letting go, let other people to be part of that movement, I think it's just a difficulty in letting go. Because if you really think about it, what's there to lose? More people want to set up, do good organization, raising fund and getting people involved. If they don't do a good job, they won't be able to get the fund.
What do you make of the lack of confidence on the governmental side? Edward, for example, the Chinese authorities are never accustomed to the idea of having NGOs, having private foundations, because politically, this might be a sensitive issue.
That's right. I mean, the whole thing is a political question, plain and simple. There's no question about that. I mean, the Ministry of Civil Affairs doesn't want to make a decision because if they make a wrong decision, then there could be problems. So it's just, why is it happening in Shenzhen? You open up the door and rats and flies can get in. And as a result, some of these foundations may be good, some may be bad. It's hard to know, like Ray said, until you actually are functioning. If you've got influence from foreigners and outsiders, then I understand the hesitancy on behalf of the Ministry of Civil Affairs to go ahead and do this. I think the thing that we don't take into account, though, is, and I've sat on a number of boards overseeing these non-governmental organizations, from sports societies that are trying to set up here in Beijing, which were refused, for not-for-profits to do legal aid for women and children, which were refused. Not refused, but what winds up happening is we put in an application and there's no word, there's no movement. Remember that this Jet Li's foundation was set up in actually 2007. It wasn't until this year that they were allowed to have their own bank account. And I think one thing we have to understand here is that The Chinese government has allowed these to exist. They just haven't allowed them to have financial oversight. They've given the financial oversight to the Red Cross in this particular instance up until now. And so there are plenty of not-for-profits here in China that are not being approved as not-for-profits. There's many NGOs that function here that are not approved as NGOs. And the issue goes very horizontal. The issue has to do with taxation. In the United States, for example, if you give money to a not-for-profit, then you are given a tax deduction. The Chinese government has not decided what it's going to do there, and this takes a bit of time to understand. And I've been involved in these discussions with the Tax Bureau on how we should implement taxation since we've instituted individual income tax this year or a couple of years ago in China. How will it impact? So what China's doing is that they're making a decision ahead of time. Is this organization good or bad? The United States does it exactly the opposite. They let anyone set up a not-for-profit, basically. It's a tax certification, not a corporate certification. And if it fails to meet the standards, like Ray said, it either fails in its business, or people refuse to give donations, or the tax authorities take away the not-for-profit status. So we have a completely different approach in the United States.
Ray, what can you tell us about the taxation policy for non-public fundraising foundations in China?
You mean the existing non-fundraising, the so-called...
Will those private donors be taxed for donating a lot of money to a private foundation?
The way I understand is that there's only a small number of non-profit organizations that has the so-called tax exemption status. So the donation to those.
Right. Just to clarify, only because we do this in law with tax. Those entities are non-taxable. So that's what Ray's talking about. The individuals who give money to those enterprises are taxed on the money that they receive, and then they're further, I'm not going to say penalized, but they don't get any benefit to give money to the not-for-profit. So in the United States, it's the other way around. You receive your money, which you may or may not be taxed on, okay, and then you donate money to a not-for-profit, and you receive a tax deduction, or you claim a tax deduction on your individual income tax. Now, the enterprises, Ray was saying, there are a number that are non-taxable. All that means is that enterprise does not pay tax to the government. But in this particular case, I guess with Jet Li's foundation, he is now in a situation where that enterprise is not paying tax. But the individuals who are getting it don't get any benefit when they give it, other than to feel good.
No, there are some organizations, for example, Red Cross is an example. If people who donate to Red Cross, they can get tax exemption from that particular donation.
On an individual income tax for an individual. Yeah,
yes.
no, but we only instituted an individual income tax as of 2008, and there is, and I've seen the forms, and I fill out the forms every year. There is no indication that if I gave money to Red Cross, there's no indication and there's no tax deduction under the Chinese tax law that I can receive a break. Okay, that has yet to be discussed, and we've discussed it a number of years ago with PBOC and the taxing authorities, and they still haven't resolved those issues. Now, the individual enterprise is tax-free, but not the individual donation.
Okay.
Well, Edward and Ray, the successful transformation of Jet Li's One Foundation in Shenzhen, the special economic zone, might be a very good pilot program. However, it's never ever the first program of its kind in China. For example, why do you think the non-public fundraising foundation in Ningbo, Zhejiang province closed?
Well, I mean, I don't know about that particular case, but anytime you look at any case, let's take Operation Smile, for example. I looked them up just before we were going to have the program. This is an operation that functions in the United States. They have, in 2008, 41% of their operating funds went to fundraising and went to management of its own enterprise. 59% goes to running a function. And this is one of the things that in the West, enterprises and organizations that are not-for-profits and NGOs must be transparent. And you have to declare. So there's good ones and there's bad ones. But like Ray said, people make the decision. Now, why people are closing in Ningbo, why Project Hope has had problems, and other not-for-profits have had problems here in China, are the exact same reasons why they have problems in the United States or anywhere else in the world. It's because people get the money isn't overseen, we don't have enough professionals to oversee what's happening.
You have answered my question, although you you did not give a direct response. In fact, during the absence of the rule of law and the relative legislation regarding charity in China, the non-public fundraising foundation in Ningbo is accused of lacking professionalism. In other words, it did not have a professional management team to take care of the transparency issue, which is very sensitive for observers of this kind of things in China. Don't go away, we'll be right back after this short break. Welcome back. Ray and Edward, in fact, back in 2006, the so-called Anti-Cancer Foundation in Ningbo, a coastal city in Zhejiang province, was founded. Now it's closed due to some serious flaws with the operation. Now, let's come back to examine other aspects regarding the non-public foundations in China. Do you believe donors are entitled to the rights to supervise how the money is used after they have donated lots and lots of money to the charitable project? Ray?
I think there's a balance. I think the word you just used, supervise, it's a bit strong. Because it's like, if I were going to donate to somebody, and if I believe they are capable and credible in doing what the donation set out to do, I can observe what happened to it. I can try to obtain the information if they are reasonably transparent, if the information is available. And it is to the benefit of the people who receive the donation to do a better job, so the donor say, gee, you did a good job, we will give you more, and keep it transparent so people know what kind of expenditure is on the actual charity and the program, how much you administrated. So Ray, that is the most important part of what you call the supervision.
Okay, Ray, let's take a closer look at the paradigm of the Buffett and Bill Gates Foundation. How do the two business tycoons oversee, or what do you think of their relationship with the Buffett and Gates Foundation?
Well, in their cases, the foundation, the money, the fund, is from them. So they take a very careful look of how it's spent, what kind of results getting. It's just like running the business and enterprise. So because they, in a sense, they are almost the owner of the fund. They have an overriding interest, which is no different than the people say another foundation where the money is raised from individuals and the public. And then the public will decide whether they would like continue to contribute or not based on the performance, perceptions, and the actual reports. And those are the information would help people determine whether they want to continue to put in or not. And in the case of Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, they take a strong managerial role of running the foundation. In the sense, they are the trustees. They are, and in the case of Bill Gates, he's the co-chairs. So they are like the managing director. So they literally looking at it like running the business.
Now, Edward, what kind of transparency can we learn from the Buffett Gates Foundation?
Well, I mean, obviously these are two very experienced business people that are world renowned, and so I think that they're setting out to do what they perceive is the correct thing with their funds, which they've made themselves. And so I think it's a good example, I think, for other people to learn from, where other people who have large amounts of money would say, hey, listen, I'm not going to be able to spend this in my lifetime, and I should do something positive with it and leave it that way. But I think what's very important is to understand what Ray was saying, which is this needs to be run like a business. And the way we have it set up in China, it's very difficult to. Another enterprise that is run, a not-for-profit or non-governmental organization that's run by the Ministry of Civil Affairs, for example, are all the chambers of commerce. When back in the early 90s, I helped to set up the American Chamber of Commerce here, which is called AmCham, which is a trademark.
You set up AmCham?
Well, that's right. I mean, currently they're infringing on a trademark that's called AmCham, which is an interesting point because they haven't run it exactly like a business, but they were handicapped to do it. When we set up the organization, there was no mechanism to have a bank account. There was no mechanism to hire people. So the Ministry of Civil Affairs, under the temporary legislation on foreign boards of commerce, was set up in 1989. And what they did is they said, boards of commerce can open. These are Chinese enterprise. So AmCham is a Chinese enterprise. But when we opened it up, we couldn't hire a single person. The money in the bank account had to come from a company that was a participating organization in the AmCham. And so what I think is very interesting, and now AmCham, interestingly enough, is infringing on the trademark that isn't owned by that organization. So what I'm saying is that they have to run it like a business. It's run by business people. America is complaining about intellectual property infringement, where we've got the American Chamber of Commerce here in China actually infringing on a trademark of another trademark owner. It's just absolutely absurd. But my point is that it was never given the ammunition to be able to run it like an organization in the beginning. And this is the problem with probably Jet Li's organization as well. Can they have their own bank account? You can set it up through the Ministry of Civil Affairs, but there's no way to employ people. How do you hire people? How do you do whatever? There isn't that mechanism yet. You have to find some other way.
So it's a matter of legal identity or legal entity for the Jet Li's One Foundation. Let's come back to take a closer look at the embarrassment that took place when Warren Buffett and Bill Gates came over for a charity dinner party last year. It ended up being cold and cheerless. A lot of the people who queried who called to query if they would be required to make donations at the dinner party. Now, what do you make of the news values of this story?
Well, I personally think the fact it kept some kind of almost 4 to 5 weeks of discussion on newspaper, TVs, and blogs on whether this is right or not right, or basically it raised a lot of attention awareness on giving, on philanthropy. So regardless what the outcome, I think just having that amount of discussion, I personally think that was very good, even though it was all a result of a misunderstanding. The misunderstanding was that when they come here, want to kind of get people to think about giving and think about, particularly the very wealthy people, to give more. There was some kind of rumors and innuendo saying they're going to come and get a bunch of people in the room and ask them to kind of make pledge right away to give how much and what percentage of their wealth. That was never quite the intention, because getting people to give or consider to give a serious amount is a long-term relationship to develop, but it was not going to be happening in one single banquet or dinner party. So that was the misunderstanding. But I think the ensuing discussion and argument and debate, I think, was a good thing.
Do you think that's exactly the purpose that Warren Buffett and Bill Gates
That was unintentional. It was totally unintentional. The original intention was meeting with a group we call a high net worth individuals in China, and ask them to start to think about what are they going to do with their money, and beyond in reinvesting their business, how much they should think about living to their children, how much they can be helping other people, so that starting the dialogue, it's a long-term relationship, and make people think about it. So that was the purpose of the gathering. But somehow it was misreported, saying they will come here, they're going to ask all the people sitting around to make a pledge that I will donate at least 50% of my wealth on a single dinner party during the first time they ever met. That was, of course, not the plan, but it was misquoted or misconstrued by the media, so resulted in this heated debate whether this is the right thing or not the right thing. But the net result is that there was a lot of good discussion, and which I actually think is a good thing.
The sleeping lion has been waken up as a result of this dramatic development in Beijing. Now, given the profile of both Buffett and Gates, why did the two business leaders keep a very low profile during their short stay in Beijing?
Depends on how you interpret what's a low profile, because part of their trip, they were here in China almost a week, and they were attending some of their business investments. And in the case of Mr. Gates, he was attending to some of the programs and learnings related to the foundation's work. So those are kind of work that usually does not result in a lot of media or publicity or coverage. And so, I mean, because of this charity kind of dialogue event, and it generates so much attention, so that's what because a lot of people, come to China. I mean, they come in quietly, they leave quietly. I mean, that's just the way they are.
That's why we do not have enough guest speakers who qualify for dialogue some of the time throughout the year. But I believe we must do more to bring them here. Okay. Now, from the long-term perspective, Ed and Ray, what do you think of the future of China's philanthropic cause? Ed?
I mean, I'm encouraged that there is something. And I mean, in defense of Mr. Buffett and in defense of Mr. Gates and what Ray said, this is an educational process. I mean, Mr. Buffett and Mr. Gates have known each other for many, many years and decided that they were going to collaborate and wind up doing this. So to come and to talk to high net worth individuals and expect that they're going to all of a sudden decide that they're going to do something immediately is naive, and I'm not sure that was the intention of either one of them when they came over here.
Wait a minute, Ed.
Yeah.
They came here against the backdrop that China is accused of not undertaking enough responsibilities as a major international player as China fast became the second biggest economy. Do you think that their visit and their presence in the capital city of Beijing has highlighted the importance or growing necessity for China to assume more international responsibility, starting from the non-public sector, starting from the novel fish?
Absolutely. And I mean, but I think that from a Chinese cultural perspective, I don't think that that's inconsistent at all. And so I think that, yeah, I really do. I think that they're here to highlight that, say China is a superpower. China is a place in which they also should be giving back.
Ray?
Well, actually, the answer is much simpler. The reason they came to China to sort of start the dialogue, make people start thinking about, is the fact outside the United States, there's more very, very wealthy people in China in terms of billionaires.
Look at the fastest growing luxury market in China, and you know why. With that, we come to the end of this program. I'm Yang Rui. Until next time, goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Frank.